Hi friends, though before I say another word, I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to close your eyes for just 5 seconds. Go ahead. Close them, think about the last time you begged, not necessarily out loud. Maybe it was a message you sent at midnight that said, please, just give me a chance. Maybe it was an interview where you smiled so hard your face hurt and you sat there shrinking yourself, hoping, praying that this person across the table would pick you. Maybe it was a phone call you made 3 times in one day, each time hanging up before the voicemail ended, because the desperation in your own voice embarrassed you. Open your eyes. I know that feeling. I know it in my bones. And I want to tell you something today that nobody told me when I needed it most. I want to look you in the eye. Every single one of you in this room, every single soul watching this on a screen somewhere in the world. And I want to tell you the truth that you were never supposed to beg, not for a job, not for an opportunity, not for a seat at someone else's table. You were never supposed to stand at the door of someone else's future with your hat in your hand, hoping they'd let you in. That is not who you are. That is not what you were good for. And today, over the next hour or so, I am going to show you exactly why. And more importantly, I'm going to show you how to become the kind of person that opportunities chase, the kind of person that companies fight over, the kind of person whose phone rings before they even apply, the kind of person who walks into a room and the room changes. First, I have to tell you a story. I want to tell you about a young man, 23 years old, no connections, no family money, no famous last name, just a hungry heart and 2 hands willing to work. This young man had applied to 47 jobs in 8 months. 47. He had a folder on his computer, a literal folder, with every rejection email he'd ever received. He kept them, not out of masochism, but because some part of him believed that if he collected enough rejections, eventually the universe would owe him a yes. He would rewrite his resume every Sunday night. Not because it was bad, it wasn't bad. He would rewrite it because he was terrified. He'd change the font. He'd move a bullet point. He'd swap out the word managed for led and helped for contributed and spend 2 hours doing it, as if the difference between landing a job and not was whether his resume used Calibri or Garamond. He went to interviews in a suit he'd bought from a thrift store. Not because he was poor. Well, okay, partly because he was poor, but also because he genuinely thought the suit would make people see him differently. He'd arrive 15 minutes early. He'd smile at the receptionist. He'd shake hands firmly. He'd done everything the YouTube videos told him to do. And every single time, he'd walk out of that building and not even make it to the car before the doubt hit him like cold water. Did I say the right thing? Was I too eager? Not eager enough? Did they like me? Do they think I'm qualified? Did I blow it when I said that one thing about my old job? And then the email would come. 3 days later, 4 days later, sometimes 2 weeks later. And it would say, in the most politely brutal language human beings have ever invented, we've decided to move forward with other candidates who more closely match our needs at this time. Other candidates. You ever read that phrase, other candidates, and just sit there in your apartment in the dark and think, who are these other people? Where did they come from? Are they smarter than me? Did they go to a better school? Do they know someone I don't know? What do they have that I don't have? That young man is me. That was me at 23. And if you've been in that place, if you've sat with your phone in your hand waiting for a call that never came, then this speech is for you today. Today. This is your moment, not theirs. Yours. Because here's what I learned. And it took me years to learn it, and a lot of pain, and a lot of humiliation that I'm going to be honest with you about today. Here's what I learned. The job was never the problem. I was the problem. Because I was unqualified. Not because I wasn't smart or hardworking or capable, but because I had built my entire sense of value around whether or not someone else chose me. I had outsourced my worth to strangers. I had let the hiring manager become my judge. I had let the interview become my courtroom. And I walked in every time as if I was on trial, hoping they'd find me innocent instead of walking in like a man who had something extraordinary to offer. There is a massive difference between those two postures, and everything I'm going to tell you today lies inside that difference. Let me give you a picture. Two candidates walk into the same interview, same job, same company, same day. Candidate number one walks in nervous. He's rehearsed his answers. He's Googled most common interview questions and memorized 5 of them. He's prepared a weakness that's actually a strength in disguise. I work too hard sometimes, or I care too much about quality. He laughs at the interviewer's jokes a little too loudly. He nods a little too eagerly. He says absolutely and definitely and for sure about 47 times. And at the end, when they ask if he has any questions, he says, "When do you think I'll hear back?" Because what he really means is, please like me. Please choose me. Please end this uncertainty. Candidate number two walks indifferently. She's done her research too, but not because she's afraid, because she's curious. She's genuinely interested in what this company is trying to build. She asks real questions. She pushes back gently on one assumption the interviewer makes. Not to be difficult, to be honest. She talks about her work with the quiet confidence of someone who has receipts. She doesn't oversell. She doesn't undersell. She just is who she is, fully unapologetically in that room. And here's the fascinating thing. Both of those candidates might get the job. But candidate number two, she'll get offered more. She'll be treated differently from day one. And 6 months later, when the next opportunity comes up, the first person the manager thinks of won't even be a question because the job didn't pick her. She picked the job. Is what I want for you. That is the transformation I'm here to talk about today. Not some trick, not some hack, not a 7-step formula for a better resume. I'm talking about a fundamental shift in how you see yourself in relation to opportunity. Now, I need to address something because some of you are already thinking it. I can feel it. You're thinking, that sounds great, but I actually need this job. I have rent to. I have a family to feed. I don't have the luxury of being too proud. And I want to say this with every ounce of love I have in me. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. There is nothing romanticized about financial pressure. There is nothing inspiring about not being able to pay your bills. The desperation is real. The fear is real. And I will never stand up here and tell you that your circumstances aren't real because that would be an insult. But here is what I also know to be true. Aspiration leaks. You cannot hide it as well as you think. It comes through in your email subject lines. It comes through in the way you follow up every 2 days. It comes through in the slight tremor in your voice when you talk about your last job. It comes through in how you answer the question, why do you want to work here? For the rehearsed speech that doesn't actually answer the question at all. And here's the cruelest irony in all of job searching. The more desperately you need it, the worse your chances become. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because humans, hiring managers, recruiters, decision makers are tribal animals. They are drawn to confidence the way plants are drawn to light. When they sense desperation, something in their gut says, wait, why is this person so desperate? Or do they know that I don't? I don't. Why hasn't anyone else wanted them? I know, it's brutal. It's unfair. But knowing it is power. So let me tell you what actually changes things. Let me tell you what I had to learn the hard way. Through 3 more years of struggle, after those 47 rejections, through building something from nothing, through failing publicly and getting up privately, through finally, becoming the person that companies came looking for instead of the person going looking for them. It starts with this. You have to know what you are before anyone else can see it. This sounds simple. It is not simple. It is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Most people go through their entire careers never truly answering this question. They know their job titles. They know their degrees. They know their years of experience. But they don't know their value. And there is a catastrophic difference. A job title is a label someone else gave you. A degree is a piece of paper that says you showed up for long enough. Years of experience just mean you've been alive for a certain number of years while doing a thing. None of that is value. Value is what you can do. Specifically, what problems you can solve, what outcomes you can produce, what change you create when you're in the room. Let me say that again because it matters. Value is not what you've done. Value is what you can do for someone else. I want you to think about that for a second. Most resumes are written backwards. They're a list of things the candidate has done. They are essentially a personal diary that nobody asked for. Here's where I went to school. Here's where I went to school. Here's where I worked. Here's how long I was there. Here are my responsibilities that the person reading your resume, the person who might hire you, is not sitting there thinking about your past. They are sitting there thinking about one thing. Can this person solve my problem? Thus, the whole world is organized around problems. Deadlines they're missing, revenue they're not hitting, processes that are broken, a team that needs leadership, a gap that needs filling. They wake up every single morning and that problem is the first thing they think about. And when they post a job, they are not writing a job description. Are they not writing a job description? They are writing a help wanted sign. They need help, genuine help. And the person who walks in and says, not in words, but in presence, in evidence, in demonstration, I understand your problem better than you do. And here's exactly how I'm going to fix it. That person does not need to beg. That person gets called back before the interview is even over. This is the first shift. Stop thinking about jobs as gatekeepers standing between you and a paycheck, and start thinking about them as people with problems desperately looking for someone who can solve them. When I finally understood this, everything changed. Not immediately, but it started to change. Now I want to tell you about a conversation that cracked my world open. I was 26, 3 years after those 47 rejections. I was doing okay. I'd finally landed something. It wasn't my dream, but it paid the bills. And I was sitting in a coffee shop across from a man named Robert. He was 60 years old. He'd built 3 companies. He was the kind of man who had more stories in his eyes than most books have in their pages. He'd agreed to give me 30 minutes. I don't know why. Maybe he was bored. Maybe he saw something in me. Maybe he just liked free coffee. But he sat across from me and he looked at me the way people who've seen a lot look at people who haven't yet. And he said, tell me what you want. And I launched into it. I told him about the job I was hoping to get, the company I was targeting, the position I was applying for. I told him about my background, my experience, my qualifications. I talked for about 4 minutes straight, and when I stopped, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I didn't ask you what job you want. I asked you what you want. I asked you what you want. And I just stared at him because I didn't have an answer. I genuinely did not have an answer. I had been so focused on getting hired, on getting chosen, on solving the immediate problem of employment, that I had never actually stopped to ask myself what I was building toward, what I was trying to become, what mark I was trying to leave. He leaned forward then and he said something I've never forgotten. He said, son, people who know what they want don't go looking for opportunities. Opportunities go looking for them. Because clarity is magnetic. Most people are so vague about what they want that they'll thinking. And when you'll take anything, you're worth nothing. But when you know exactly what you want and why, when you can say it clearly, when your work reflects it, when you live it out loud, you become impossible to ignore. Impossible to ignore. I wrote those words down in my phone that day. I still have them. And I have spent every year since then trying to earn them. Here is what clarity does. It forces you to make choices. And making choices is terrifying because every choice closes doors. If you say want to build healthcare technology that serves rural communities, you are closing the door on fintech, on fashion, on entertainment, on 100 other industries. And that feels like loss. Here's the thing about closed doors. They create focus, and focus creates mastery. And the mastery creates scarcity. And scarcity, real scarcity, of being genuinely excellent at something specific, is the most powerful career tool you will ever own. Think about the last time you needed a surgeon. Did you want a general doctor who was pretty good at everything? Or did you want the surgeon who had done this exact procedure 3,000 times and had a reputation that made other surgeons refer their own family members to her? You wanted the specialist. You would have paid more. You would have waited longer. You would have traveled further. That is what mastery does. That is what specialty does. It makes you the surgeon in the room. And the surgeon does not beg for patience. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't have one clear thing I want to. I'm still figuring it out. And I want to honor that. I genuinely do. The pressure to know your passion, to have it figured out, to point at it clearly and say, this is my calling. That pressure is real and it can be paralyzing. But here's what I want to say. You don't have to know your passion to start building mastery. You just have to be willing to go deeper. Most people skim the surface of their skills. They learn enough to get hired. They do enough to keep the job. They stay just competent enough to not get fired. And they wonder why they feel invisible. The people who get chased, the people that opportunities run toward, are the people who went further than required, who learned what wasn't on the syllabus, who practiced after hours, who asked questions that made their managers slightly uncomfortable because they were thinking 2 levels above their role. I want to tell you about a woman I know named Maya. Maya was a customer service representative at a mid-sized software company. She was answering phones, dealing with complaints, logging tickets, the classic entry-level grind. Now Maya could have done her job and gone home. That was the contract. That was what they were paying her for. But Maya was curious. She noticed that a certain type of complaint came up again and again. A bug in the product that customers were hitting constantly. She started documenting it. Not because anyone asked her to, not because it was her job, but because something in her hated unsolved problems. Because in a world drowning in noise, someone demonstrating genuine expertise is one of the rarest and most magnetic things you can do. I started writing about my industry. The lessons I'd learned, the mistakes I'd made, the patterns I'd noticed with zero audience. I was writing to nobody. I published for months with fewer readers than I have fingers. It was humbling. It was sometimes embarrassing. There were posts that got 2 likes, one from my mother and one from a bot. But I kept going. Not because I had a strategy, because I believed the ideas mattered. Because writing helped me think more clearly. Because every time I finished a piece, I understood something better than I did when I started. And then something happened. Slowly, almost without me noticing, something happened. People started reading, then sharing, then reaching out. A journalist found one of my articles and quoted me. A conference organizer read my work and invited me to speak. A company founder reached out because his team was struggling with exactly the problem I'd written about, and he wanted to know if I'd consult. I did not apply for any of those opportunities. I did not pitch myself. I did not send cold emails or optimize my LinkedIn or find the name of the right person and reach out strategically. I simply made something real, and real things attract real attention. Now, let me pause here and be honest with you about something. Because if I let this speech only be about inspiration without being about truth, I'm failing you. That building your reputation. Becoming someone that opportunities chase is not a quick process. It is not a 6-week course. It is not a hack. It is a long, slow, sometimes grinding, sometimes lonely, sometimes deeply discouraging process of showing up and doing the work before the work pays off. And most people quit, not because they're lazy, not because they don't care, but because the gap between starting to build your reputation and it actually producing results, that gap is long and dark and silent. And most people interpret that silence as failure. They think nobody is noticing, so I must be doing it wrong. Or worse, I'm not good enough for anyone to notice. And they stop talk about that gap for a minute. Because I think it is the most important terrain in any career. And it is almost never discussed honestly. There is a concept I think about often. The Japanese have a word, shokunan, which refers to a craftsperson who has devoted their life to mastery of a single skill. A shokunin sushi chef might spend years doing nothing but washing rice before they're allowed to touch the fish. Years, just washing rice. Not because the master chef is cruel, or because rice is that complicated, but because mastery requires a period of invisible labor. It requires doing the unglamorous thing with full devotion, before you ever get to do the glamorous thing. Our culture hates this. We want shortcuts. We want results by Friday. We want to post once and go viral. We want to apply and get called back tomorrow. We want to skip the years of rice washing and go straight to the sushi. But here's what the Chokunan knows that we've forgotten. The years of invisible labor are not a delay on the way to mastery. They are the mastery. The rice washing is not preparation for the craft. It is the craft. And the person who did it, who showed up every day, who was present, who paid attention even when it seemed like nothing was happening. That person develops something that cannot be faked, cannot be shortcut, cannot be purchased. They develop depth. And depth is what separates the truly great from the merely competent. It's what makes some professionals magnetic and others forgettable. It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's depth. The accumulated weight of thousands of hours of deliberate attention. You know who you can't fake your way past. someone who has depth. You walk into a room with someone who has spent years going deep in their field, and within 5 minutes they know. They can hear it in the questions you ask. They can feel it in the quality of your thinking. They know whether you've done the work or whether you've just learned the vocabulary. And they know, usually within the first interaction, whether you are someone worth investing in. The people who get chased are not the people with the most impressive resumes. They are the people with depth. They are the people who have done the rice washing. And they carry that depth with them everywhere. In the way they speak, in the way they listen, in the way they handle problems, in the quality of their ideas, your depth. But you can choose to start building it today.